Hello, you're listening to the Terralex podcast, where we break down current issues and trends in the legal industry. Join us as we gain valuable insights from our member law firms across the world, as well as from the in-house counsel community and experienced professionals in their field.
Hello and good morning. My name is Tim Shannon. I am the Chief Business Development Officer for the Terralex network of law firms. Thank you for joining us today. We do hope that you, your families, and your teams are doing well in these very challenging times. Terralex is comprised of member firms in more than 150 jurisdictions around the world with over 20,000 lawyers. Our firms work together to address cross-border issues for clients, and in times like these, working with a globally connected local law firm is more important than ever. Joining us today, we have partners from 4 of our member firms. We'll begin with Denise Alvarenga from Motta Fernandes in Brazil, Ignacio Santamaria from Lloreda, Camacho in Colombia, Victor Ferro from Rubio in Peru, and we will close the program with Juan Olivera from Olivera Abogados in Uruguay. We have just 1 hour today to cover a few topics that are challenging law firms as well as the in-house counsel community as we all work through the COVID-19 crisis. So that we can stay on schedule, our panelists have asked that I give them a 2-minute warning during their program, but no doubt we will not address every concern affecting your business. So please do submit questions during the session via the chat function or email me directly at tshannon@terralex.org. And we will work to get an answer to you right away from our local member firm. We also do have a fantastic cross-border COVID-19 resource center at terralex.org where you can find answers to your questions. We're going to begin today with Denise in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Denise, go ahead and please take it away.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon for the ones who is already afternoon, and good night even we have someone from the other side of the globe. Well, I would like to start as an introduction saying that here in Brazil, and I included myself, we were not prepared for any of this. It was a scary moment in the beginning of March that suddenly we had to go home, stay home, work from home, and we are not prepared. We have to adapt ourselves, adapt our employees, system to have all the tools they need. And it was a very strange moment, I can tell you. And it's not easy to say in a country like Brazil, and I believe in the whole Latin America, to say to everyone to stay home and not go to work, because some of the people don't have a home to stay at. And others who does have a home, it's a very small one in a very poor conditions with no sanitary good conditions. So it was a scary moment. So, and then we had the main restrictions of the federal government, which were social isolation and social distancing. We are not locked down here, but there is this strong recommendation, at least part of the government still does that, but the others don't, so it's complicated. And then we had a lot of people that are in an informal market. So they had to do something to assist this population that don't have how to provide food and basic conditions for them and their families. And it was how the government started to work and give their first acts to improve the situation. And then we had all these essential services keep going, like hospitals, supermarkets, gas stations, and we can go out, but with a social distancing. And in our field, all the court terms and all the courts are closed until today. From Monday on, we will start to have the terms back, because fortunately here in Brazil, the system that we have now, we can, 9% of our whole process are in a digital system, so we can move forward. And they established a new virtual and teleconference system to start going back to hearings, which is it's new for everyone, and we don't know how it's really going to work. But as lawyers, we can refuse, or we can say, no, we're not going to this hearing because we don't have all the evidences, we don't have all the documents. But it's new for everyone, and we will go through this from this next week, okay? And so the main important federal order was to help these people that doesn't have how to provide themselves. So they enacted a law to pay emergency benefit, which is 600 reais in 2 installments. But you know what? 600 reais right now, it's around $110, which is not very much, but it was what was supposed, what they could do to help these people. And again, it was complicated because they were estimating that around 20 to 25 million people were going to request this kind of benefit. And at the end of the day, it were 46 million people who requested that. And some people didn't even have how to receive that money, so they had to create a way that they can receive that through virtual standards, but it was difficult, and a lot of them had to go to the banks to collect this money. And you know, in the beginning of this, $1 was 4.2 reais. Now $1 is 5.5 reais. Okay, so this is what it's very important in this situation, the ambiguity between health and economy. And this is very hard. The decisions are hard. And in our country, we have added to that a very unstable and emotional president that is making things worse than it can be, because he establishes an stability that we don't need now. He's his own enemy. He says things like, I'm not the one who digs the graves, or although I am called, his name is Jair Messias Bolsonaro, and Messias in Portuguese, it's Messiah. Though I'm not a Messiah, though I have a Messiah name, I don't do miracles. I don't talk about that. But on the other hand, the Supreme Court here make things they are reestablishing the social, what we need. They are ruling that to maintain our stability and our institutions. On the labor and employment side, which is my field, it was enacted 2 what we call here provisional measures that will become law in the next days, 927 and 936. that allowed us to suspend employment agreements, reduct salary and time shift, suspend costs related to the payroll, which is very, very important, to anticipate vacation without being needed to pay the bonus that is calculated over the vacation period here in Brazil. So this is very important, and it's what I've been working on the last 3 to 4 weeks. And a lot of people and a lot of employers, they had to get into this new kind of agreements, individual or collective, with the participation with the union to their employees. On the other practice of law, I think in tax field, it was the federal government, they reduced rates, they prorogate the payment of some of the federal taxes, especially the ones related to payroll costs and industry rates. Other force majeure is something there's been a lot being discussed here, because, as I believe, this is a force majeure that no one was really expected, and it's more than it was in the law.
Pardon me, Denise, this is your 2-minute warning.
Okay, thank you, Tim. And I would like to finish my speech with the next steps. The world is already different, and we are going to face a lot of difficulties. But I'm an optimist, and I believe that the world has changed and will change a lot, but we can make this change to a positive way. We can make this change to have a better world. We have a lot to reflect. The world didn't have very good health conditions to everyone. We still have a very big gap between poor and rich. So isn't that the time to review all the situations as lawyers, as business people, and then make a better world and take this experience to use these new technologies that we are learning to have to use them as best as we can in a better way. I believe in humankind, and I think that with empathy we can go forward with all this catastrophe, and we can together make better. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Denise. Next up, we have Ignacio Santamaria from Lloreda, Camacho, our member firm for Colombia. Ignacio, if you're ready, please go ahead and begin.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you for your kind introduction, and good morning for everyone, and thank you for being here with us this morning. I will briefly cover all the topics mentioned in the slide. Nicole, if you could help me. And basically, the Colombian government had an early reaction to the pandemic declaration, which has led the country to have one of the lowest levels of transmission of the COVID-19 virus. Around 6,000 confirmed cases, 270 deaths, 1,270 recoveries. Those are good news, unfortunately, but good numbers. This prompt reaction slowed the propagation of the virus and allowed the Colombian health system to try to be as ready as possible to face the consequences of the pandemic. Several beds, respiratory machines, masks, tests, etc. were acquired. The Colombian government has issued so far more than 72 law decrees arising from the economic, social, and environmental state of emergency, along with other dozens of decisions. Therefore, to try to manage, organize, and understand these huge amounts of provisions issued by the Colombian government so far, it is important to understand where these provisions come from. Hence, I believe that we can classify them in three different categories. The first one are those provisions that come from a decree of 2016, that was 4 years ago, which allows the Colombian government to decree the state of sanitary emergency. This declaration was made by means of resolution number 385 of March 12, 2020, and the sanitary emergency was decreed until May 30, 2020. Decisions in connection with the sanitary emergency have an effect mainly over the public and private network of health services, such as hospitals, laboratories, etc., but also over other sectors, basically to prevent the expansion of the virus in this case. Therefore, based upon the sanitary emergency, the government was able to close schools, universities, ban meetings with more than a certain amount of people, etc., and to take other measures in connection with the sanitary aspects of the pandemic. These decisions are administrative decisions under the control of the Council of State, and they will remain enforceable until the end of the sanitary emergency that will be, we hope, May 30, 2020, in principle. The second bucket of provisions are those arising from Article 215 of the Colombian Constitution. In other words, decisions arising from the economic, social, and environmental state of emergency. To try to prevent the tongue twister, I will refer to this as the economic emergency. The economic emergency is an exceptional state, among others, such as the state of war or threatens the public peace, whereby the government of Colombia, meaning the Colombian president with all his ministers, is empowered to issue provisions with the same category of the laws. The latter doesn't mean that the Colombian Congress is closed, and I want to be very clear on this. The Congress is still open and working in other matters different from those particularly related to the economic emergency. The term of this economic emergency may not last longer than 90 days for each calendar year, and the law and the legal provisions issued must be exclusively to avert the crisis and to prevent its expansion. Furthermore, these legal provisions may create or modify taxes on a non-permanent basis and will stop being enforceable at the next fiscal year unless the Congress grants them a permanent status. These legal provisions may not, in any case, harm the social rights of the workers, and that's also very important. The Congress will be summoned within 10 days after the elapse of the economic emergency, and it has a 30-day term extendable to carry out a sort of convenience and opportunity analysis regarding the grounds upon which the economic emergency was declared. Within the next year of the economic emergency declaration, Congress can revoke, modify, or complement the mentioned legal provisions regarding those provisions that normally come from the government, and may exercise this faculty regarding all other legal provisions. These legal provisions are under the automatic control of the Constitutional Court. The third bucket of provisions are those arising from the ordinary faculties of the government and of the Congress. These provisions have different categories, and their scope and term and of enforceability depends upon the type of the provision. As you may see, the first analysis that needs to be carried out is the type of provision that you are reviewing and the legal source from which it comes in order to understand how to apply them, for how long time they will be enforceable, and so on. Okay, in regards to the tax provisions, in general, the tax provisions of the Colombian government related to the pandemic have been the extension of some of the terms to fulfill with certain obligations and payments at the national and local level, the suspension of certain administrative proceedings, and a summary proceeding to get the reimbursement of value-added tax credit balances. In addition, the enactment of a solidarity tax for pensions and salaries of governmental employees higher than 10 million pesos, which is approximately $2,500 US. There are several doubts and concerns about the constitutionality of this solidarity tax, and I'm sure that this decision will face a lot of legal challenges. In regards to labor provisions, the government has been issuing several provisions regarding health, security, mobility, etc., in those sectors which are not subject to the lockdown provisions. However, for April and May 2020, all contributions to the pension funds, both individual savings and average premium, to be paid in May and June, the next month, were reduced from 16% to 3% of the salary base. The employers pay 75% and the employees 25% as customary. This will entail a cash relief for the companies, and I believe that it is a very important measure. The weeks of April and May.
This is your 2-minute warning.
Thank you. The weeks of April and May 2020 will add to the number of weeks necessary to be granted with a pension. Furthermore, requirements to work from home or home office were suspended in Colombia. Said requirements are quite strict, expensive for employers, and difficult to fulfill with. There are some provisions regarding the leasing agreements, and basically what these provisions allow are for the parties to the contract to agree on the terms and conditions of the contract. There are no penalties in case of moratorium in the payment of the rental fees. The expiry terms and the eviction processes are suspended until June 30, 2020, and we will see what will happen from June 30, 2020 onwards. Furthermore, the payments to the condominium for the administration of the property can be paid anytime without any default interest. In regards to the theory of the unforeseen events and force majeure, as Denise was mentioning, these theories are quite common in most legislation and are basically events that release the parties from fulfilling with its obligations without the parties being considered in breach of a contract. What I have to say about this is that the courts will, at the end of the day, determine on a case-by-case basis if these theories are applicable or not to the different contractual situations. As you can see, these provisions are trying to reduce the damages caused by the pandemic, but the outcome, as Denise was saying, is very difficult to predict. The only way to overcome these very unusual circumstances, I believe, is to work together as a team with generosity, to be smart and pragmatic, and to live one day at a time. Many thanks.
Thank you so much, Ignacio. Fantastic job. Next, we will go ahead and hand it over to Victor Ferro from Rubio in Peru. Victor, if you're ready, please go ahead.
This pandemic confronts us with a very difficult process. That is, produces an abrupt break in the way we related as individuals and how business is conducted. Until a vaccine emerges, it will be essential to maintain the practice of social distance and limitations on mass gatherings. In the working field, this entails significant changes in the way productive tasks are carried out. After years of talking about teleworking today, in the space of just few weeks, we have had to implement home office across the board. However, in Peru, only 14 of the salary population can carry out their work under this modality. As a reference, in the US, 37% of the workforce can work remotely. Economic effects due to the pandemic have been shocking in Peru. Recent statistics report that 42 of Peruvians are suffering serious income restrictions. A number of measures have been implemented by the government to mitigate the situation of informal workers through the provision of financial assistance. Concerning the formal employee, there is a cataract of measures, which we'll deal with briefly, as they are the ones that are of interest of our clients. Let us bear in mind that quarantine and consequent paralysis at the work centers in Peru began on March 16, and after several extensions, has been extended until May 10, meaning for 56 consecutive days. I would like to focus my presentation on the labor measures established by the government. Initially, the regulations issued empower the company to implement home office unilaterally. When this was not possible due to the nature of the company's activities, the employer was obliged to grant paid leave, subject to the compensation agreed between the company and the employee. In the absence of such agreement, the compensation will be carried out by means of overtime after the conclusion of the quarantine. It was established that workers who are part of the so-called risk group, people that means that are more than 60 years old or with a chronic illness, must necessarily carry out their work by means of home office. And if this is not possible, they are entitled to paid leave subject to compensation in favor of the employer for the entire period of the health emergency, which is longer than the quarantine and lasts until June 9. It is clear that at this point, this compensation with overtime is not feasible. It was also regulated the type of company that could continue to operate by producing essential goods or services, such as food, pharmaceuticals, health facilities, etc. Later, for those employers who, due to the nature of their activities, could not implement home office or continue to grant paid leave due to the level of its economic affectation, it was authorized that they could suspend employment contracts, provided that previously they had tried to reach an agreement with employees in order to apply alternative measures to the work stoppage. Among these alternative measures, we can mention the following. Grant earned or early vacation leave, reduce the working hours, reduce remuneration, or other compatible measures. Bear in mind that these measures should be negotiated with the union or the workers concerned. But it is not essential to reach agreement, but it must be demonstrated that an attempt was made to reach consensual solutions. If these are not successful, the employer is entitled to suspend the employment contracts. Suspension means that the employees stop providing services and the employer stops paying wages. However, in this context, they may request the company to pay them in advance certain economic benefits of legal origin. The suspension of the employment contract can be extended until July 9 of this year. The labor authorities must verify that, in fact, the employer was not able to apply home office due to the nature of his services or is not in the possibility of continue providing paid leave, either because it will not be feasible for the employer to obtain the compensation of such leave, or because the employer is in a very difficult economic situation. If the labor authorities concludes that the suspension is not in accordance with the legal parameters, the authority will order that suspension be lifted, as well as the payment of the lost remuneration. In addition, a significant fine to the employer will apply. These are the labor-related measures that arise from the legal mandate and the economic mechanisms that have been foreseen to mitigate the interruption of activities. Home office has been implemented in a rush due to the current circumstances, but it cannot be ignored that it has both advantages and disadvantages. Some of the advantages may be the following: reduces the employer infrastructure and office costs by reducing the need for them. Enable flexible working hours. Reduce commuting time, which relieves stress caused by traffic and congestion in cities without adequate public transportation. Some disadvantages include the following: difficulty for the employees to adapt to home office, to his own personal characteristics, lack of an adequate environment at home to provide their services, a decrease in the possibilities of learning from the neighboring coworker as it is usual in the face-to-face work. There is a feeling of isolation of the worker that can cause psychological damage. It can produce a feeling of emotional detachment of the employee from the company. Some employees have already reported that they're suffering depression, that they're having this psychological damage. Remember that in Peru we have almost 2 months of stoppage right now. And there is an interesting discussion if this can be considered as an illness related to the work. Because if this is the case, some compensation can be sued by the employee, asking the employer to pay for the damages. Of course, this is brand new, and we still have to think a little more about that. Everything indicates that the home office will not be limited to the period of quarantine that are in force in our countries, that it has come to stay on a large and long scale. And the difficulties it may cause can be overcome on the basis of a dialogue and understanding between employers and them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Victor. We're actually right on schedule, so that's great. We're going to have plenty of time for questions at the end. Next, we have Juan Olivera from Olivera Abogados in Uruguay. Nicole, if you could advance the slide. Thank you. Juan, go ahead.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you for my colleagues for the previous presentations. I think they were very helpful, and they help us have an idea and an overview of what we are facing here in Latin America. I think we can all agree that nobody saw this coming. Really, a global economy has faced an unprecedented fall, and all countries are still sort of numb from the blow, and as well as we all come to sort of terms with this new reality. Compared to other countries, Uruguay has fortunately experienced a rather milder challenge. The curve has been controlled very early, and there are very low levels of propagation so far. The pandemic hit out Uruguay by the beginning of March, which was the same time that the new government, assumed its position after 15 years of the central left party being in power. So we now have a new government, which is, I would say, more central right, or more business friendly, with a strong concern on social policies. So it's a nice combination, and the new government has been. I think they have done a great job at handling this very difficult situation, which they found they were faced with this as soon as they stepped in. To give you an idea, the numbers here in Uruguay seem to be under control. So far we have 630 cases, 200 of which are active cases. We have, sadly, we had the disease of 15 people, but as you can see, these numbers, they are very, very controllable. And the number of new cases is going down. The health system has responded very well with no lack of attention or bottlenecks. But as in any other countries, Uruguay has also adopted a number of measures which are necessary and which have, I think, they have a huge impact in the fairly good results that we are seeing around this pandemic in our country right now. From the very beginning, Uruguay, the government passed declared a state of emergency, which did not involve a general lockdown of the country or a mandatory quarantine as in other places. So we have the freedom to move around. All activities involving public gatherings were suspended, of course, and institutions and society in general have overall been very reasonable and compliant with government suggestions and petitions, probably because of the news we keep getting from other countries that are having a harder time coping with the virus, right? I think the main objective of our government has been to prevent the payment chain from breaking, and that's why it hasn't been so hard on the restrictive measures. There have been a key legal measures that were taken, such as special and more flexible unemployment allowances systems, the suspension of labor contracts, and the advance of payments of certain labor benefits, such as vacation payments. As for litigation and administrative proceedings, procedural terms and deadlines were suspended. There was also a deferral of payment for the payment of taxes, and also the deadlines for the presentation of tax returns were delayed. Home office and telework was required by decree with the maintenance of remunerations for workers. There were also many consumer protection has been put into place. So although there were no price control measures taken, public authority has increased control to prevent opportunistic speculation and abusive prices, and the abusive prices being placed on basic goods. And also a solidarity fund was, with a temporary solidarity tax, was put into place, and this fund is going to help sort of fund and have all these measures being put into place. There's also a big contribution from the public sector. So across all the public administration, there was a temporary reduction of salaries, which obviously affects more those positions of higher hierarchy. So what to expect in the short terms? In terms of activity, our country is already sort of opening many of its industries and activities. The construction in the sector has already been opened and is being closely monitored for to see if there are any new race in contagious in diseases. Schools will be progressively be opening as of next week. Food stores and drug stores and other commercial stores have been open all the time. They have never been closed. That's a good thing. And also credit facilities and incentives are being given to support certain industries, especially agribusiness, which is the intention of the government is clearly to have this sector, the agribusiness sector, boost and help boost and support the economy. And this is a sector that has been particularly being affected not only by this virus, but also by the drought, the lack of rain. As for legal measures to expect, there was a new urgency law for immediate attention that has been presented to the Congress with a wide variety of strong measures to attend aspects, all sorts of aspects to, again, boost the economy and take measures that have long been delayed by previous government, which are sort of business friendly. There's a majority of coalition in Congress, so this regulation is expected to be passed very soon and open our economy to further markets and foster our investment in Uruguay in the next few months and in the next years. There are other regulations that are expected to be passed, and as I am now entering to my final 2 minutes, and before Tim steps in.
You beat me to it. Thanks.
Yeah. There are a number of other legal measures that I think we need to be monitoring. A new telework bill of law has been presented to Congress. We will probably see new data privacy regulations being passed to meet international standards, GDPR standards. As weeks progress, I think we will see an increase in restructuring and bankruptcy proceedings. Some businesses are not going to make it, and I think there will be opportunities for distressed M&A deals and other restructuring operations with credit entities being open to help in this term. So what to expect in the longer term? So what are the longer term prospects? The government has sent a clear message that taxes will not be raised. It's not to be taken lightly, because over the past 15 years, Uruguay has increased its fiscal deficit, which is now 5%. And one of the mainstays of President Leguia, which is a new president, one of the mainstays of his campaign was a drastic reduction in the cost of the state and reducing fiscal deficit without raising taxes. So these are good news for all businesses. And if we see the region, Brazil is facing difficulties as we heard before. In passing necessary reforms. Argentina is heading into probably a profound crisis, and in the middle of that, where Uruguay, I think we have a rather solid situation. We've learned the lessons back from 2001, and we have managed to build a reliable financial system with a central bank with robust reserves. We expect a falling gross domestic product because of this disease of 1.5%, but a recovery of 2% next year, considering private and public investments which are not expected to be affected at all by this pandemic. And according to economic studies, the measures taken by the government will help to keep the inflation under 9%, and is expected to be reduced to 7.5% next year. So And another of the good things is that Uruguay, in these scenarios, has almost limited capacity to access international credit. So all these adding up, I think Uruguay has a very solid situation. Our challenge is keeping the political and social stability that we've experienced so far. And just to finish, I can only say what my previous colleagues said. We are facing a new reality. Victor said this new reality is here has come to stay. I think that's completely true. Tim, I pass the microphone to you for if anyone has questions, and thank you very much, everyone, for your time.
Thank you so much, Juan. I do have a few questions that have been submitted so far. If you look to the bottom of your screen, you'll see a button that says Q&A. If you click there, you can submit questions via that tool, and we can answer them live, or again, we can send you a response if we do run out of time. So the first question I have is some speakers have talked about lease agreements and contractual obligations. Are these force majeure or exemption from performance legal theories contained in your jurisdiction's civil codes and applied across the board? Or should these be specifically provided for in contractual agreements to be applied? Ignacio, could we begin with your response?
Yeah, Tim, definitely. In the case of Colombia, the force majeure provisions and the unforeseen events provisions are contemplated in the law. Therefore, they are applicable to all contracts, regardless of the fact that they have been agreed in the same. In the case of the lease agreements that I specifically mentioned, those arises from the decrees issued under this sanitary emergency and under this economic emergency, and therefore, basically, what those provisions said is that certain obligations are extended up to June 30, 2020, and that there will be no penalties and no fines during these months until the end of the sanitary emergency, which will be May 30, but you need to add 1 month because the decree expressly provide that. But in the case of the unforeseen events and force majeure, you can have both situations. You can have them agreed in the contract, and therefore the circumstances will be ruled by what was agreed between the parties in the contract. But also, if you don't have those provisions included in the contract, they will be applicable to the contract by means of the law. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, move on to Denise. Are you available to respond to the question?
Well, yes, and it's quite the same here in Brazil. We have this provision in the law. So, but what was previously said by Ignacio is that it will be solved in a case-by-case analysis, because what is provided in the law is not what we have now. So discussions are already being brought up.
Okay, fantastic. Victor, are you available to respond?
Yes. Well, I think that our situation is quite similar to the one described by Ignacio regarding Colombia. I mean, you may have this kind of provision stipulated in the contract, and of course they will apply, saying that the force majeure has changed the conditions, and applying the contract, it has to be amended. Nevertheless, if you don't have that kind of provisions in the contract, the civil code has also rules related to force majeure, and is based on a rule that goes back to the Roman Empire, the Roman law. In Latin is rebus sic stantibus, which means when something comes so expensive because new condition that has arisen, the other party has the right to review the contract and ask for change the conditions. I think that kind of provision, that kind of rule established in the law shall apply to this situation right now, because if there's no provision in the contract related to the force majeure, the civil code has rules regarding this matter.
Perfect. Juan, would you like to respond?
Sure. I think there's no question that there's an enormous similarity between the regulations that we have all over Latin America in civil regulation, and to that extent, I don't think Uruguay is any different from the situation in Colombia, in Peru, or in Brazil. I would say the same. I mean, we just need to see what the judges' court's position is going to be on a case-by-case basis, and this has a lot to do on how contracts are drafted in the first place. So what I would say is it's good to have a risk analysis on how where companies are standing in this respect by taking a close look at the wording of their contracts and having this matter into consideration. Because I think phenomena like the ones we are experiencing right now, pandemic, like the ones we're seeing right now, is part of a new reality, and contracts will have to be amended accordingly.
Thank you. A really good direct question about Uruguay, Juan. So for European and particularly Spanish companies, Uruguay has been seen to have a very favorable tax structure. Do you believe that COVID-19 will have any impact on that moving forward? Do you think that will change, or will it be able to maintain its favorable tax system?
As I said, the new government has pledged to keep the tax structure and not putting new taxes into place. So the aim is not only preserving a good business environment for investment and for foreign investors, but also, making it better if possible, right? I don't think. Uruguay has been seen sometimes as a tax haven. I wouldn't say we are in that position at this moment. I think over the past 5 years and 10 years, there have been many tax reforms and many other regulations put into place that have sort of aligned Uruguay with the OECD standards are, and so I wouldn't place Uruguay as a tax haven, to be honest. But if the question is, are there going to be an increase of tax, or is going to be more burdensome for foreign companies? No, I don't think so. On the contrary, I think Uruguay is going to open more and be more attentive to foreign concerns beyond Mercosur, and particularly, I mean, the new government has mentioned, I mean, has prioritized relations with Europe and the U.S. and well, China is a very important commercial partner for us also. So I think that's going to be a priority to preserve those that good relations, a good status for foreign business.
Thank you. We have another great question here. I'd like to start with Victor on this one. So what is the anticipated impact on the energy sector as regards to long-term projects? We'll go ahead and start with Victor in Peru.
Well, I think that most economic sectors were facing a slowdown, including energy. There are, of course, some projects still going on, but we're not so sure of the lack of those projects. Why? Because we have now more offer of energy than we required. The thing is that we've been offering our energy to neighboring countries because we have more offer than we need. So the prices are going down, which is not the best moment to have new investments going on. I think that in the short term, business is still slowing down in specific areas, and energies, it seems like it's going to be one of those.
Thank you so much. Denise, would you like to address the question about long-term energy projects in Brazil?
Yes, they have already been affected. They are claiming and discussing this force majeure provision of the law. We have some infrastructure projects that are being affected, and we have the same here in Brazil. We have a decrease in the industries, so we have more available energy than the used to be needed. So we are discussing that here in all of these long-term contracts. Yes.
Thanks, Denise. Ignacio, your turn related to long-term energy projects in Colombia. Any effects so far?
Yeah, I think it will basically happen the same. The industrial consumption has slowed down, definitely, for obvious reasons. Home consumption has raised, but of course, is not enough in terms of megawatts. The Colombian grid is basically hydropower, and we had a very dry season on February, and therefore some thermoelectric power plants needed to be turned on, and the cost of the kilowatt was more expensive during these 2 months. I mean, to complete the panorama. So, but it started to rain again, and therefore the cost of the kilowatt should go down again. The government has a lot of interest in promoting clean energies, and there has been a couple of actions in the past couple of years, and I believe that they will continue. The government will continue with this effort, basically because of what happened on February. I mean, the government is understanding that we need to be ready with all the tools necessary to address a shortage of energy. So large projects, yes, I think that they will not go in the next couple of months, but clean energy projects, definitely yes.
Thank you so much, Ignacio. Yeah, we actually, Ignacio, you and I worked recently on a clean energy project in Colombia, so there's definitely a lot of opportunity there. Juan, we'll go ahead and end the program with your response to the question about long-term energy projects in Uruguay.
Well, Uruguay has, for a long time, embraced renewable energy projects and foster this kind of projects. So right now, 100% of our need for energy is covered by hydroelectric systems, and precisely by wind farms and solar panel farms. So renewable energy means. And that excess of energy is being exported by Uruguay. So I think I would say that there will be like interesting opportunities of major projects in this field, because I mean, basically the need of energy is pretty much covered. It is a good news that the price of oil has gone down, but with all this being said, I think it's too soon to tell how all this is going to impact the structure of costs of companies operating in our country. But yeah.
Thank you so much, Juan. There's so much more that we could cover. Unfortunately, our hour is up. For example, other questions that have been posed about employers' responsibility to address mental health issues, related to workers' return to the office. I think that's a very important topic. For example, the experience of being quarantined for a month, 2 months, even 3 months has been compared to coming out of your home with post-traumatic stress disorder. There are a lot of issues out there that employers are going to have to address, and that's just in the employment space. So again, if any of the attendees have any other questions for our panelists, feel free to send them on to me at tshannon, TSHANNON @terralex.org, and we will make sure that your question is sent to the correct jurisdiction and a response gets back to you. So thank you again so much for your participation today. Thank you to our panelists, and be safe out there. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.